Ross Tucker, our good buddy, Westwood One CBS Sports NFL college football analyst. He does Eagles preseason games and got promotion, I believe, at CBS there. Are you moving up the food chain at CBS?
Yeah, I think so, Dan. It sounds like it. Last year, I was on the seventh crew for CBS, which means you get 3 or 4 games. It depends on which game they pick for Sunday Night Football in Week 18. So I ended up getting 3 games. I also got a bunch of really cool college games last year as well. And so this year, I'm moving up to the sixth crew, which don't quote me on this. I think it's somewhere between 7 to 10, maybe 8 to 11 NFL games, which is really cool, really exciting. And I'll have some awesome college games as well this year. They haven't announced that yet, so I'll wait and let them announce that. But some really cool environments, some really cool football games this year. I'm already fired up.
All right. How about a round of applause for Ross Tucker?
Yeah, Ross Tucker.
Let's go, Ross.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Big time. Big time.
Todd said you wouldn't amount to anything. So that's...
That was something off the record in private, but this is what you do.
Okay. So explain this to me with Jerry's logic of the Dallas Cowboys right now, because now it's becoming a real thing. Most networks, most radio or TV hosts, they try to troll people and always include the Cowboys. Well, now it's becoming something because CeeDee Lamb is holding out. Dak has to kind of explain why he's not being extended. And Jerry's telling us that they don't have a lame duck coach in Mike McCarthy. So what is real and what gets real bad anytime soon?
And I'll add another one to that, Dan, which if this were another team in another situation would be being talked about a lot more. I think Micah Parsons is probably the best defensive player in the NFL. Certainly if you look at the last 3 years and you combine those 3 years, if I were him, Dan, and I know that I'm worth $35 million a year, I'm not taking the field this year without a new adjusted contract. Are you kidding me? He should be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. The guy is ridiculous. And I don't really know what Jerry or Stephen Jones are talking about. When Jerry continually talks about playing option quarterback, to me, that's kind of insulting. I guess what he's saying is he wants the opportunity to move on from Dak. He wants the opportunity to not have to pay CeeDee Lamb. It's like, hey, Jerry, they're kind of your best players. They're top 5 at marquee positions in the league. And then Stephen Jones makes it sound like it's impossible to pay, more than one player. He's like, well, the Vikings, they paid Jefferson, but they're not paying anybody else. They just paid Christian Darrisaw, the second highest paid left tackle in the league. Dan, the Eagles, have a $50+ million quarterback. They have 2 wide receivers making over $20 million a year, well over $20 million a year. They have the second highest paid running back in Saquon Barkley, and they have three offensive linemen making over $20 million a year. It can be done. The earlier you do it, the easier it is to plan for it and structure it and plan around it. When Stephen Jones acts like they're in this Rubik's Cube impossible situation, all you have to look at is the other really good team in the division, which doesn't have any contract issues because they take care of it well in advance.
And that's what I've said before with Jerry. He did this with Dak before. And the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost you. CeeDee Lamb, as soon as A.J. Brown got his deal in Philadelphia, I would have said, hey, come on in. Here's the numbers. Paid him then. If you want to get out ahead of Michael Parsons, maybe you could have done that, but now it's going to be $35 million. Dak, could you have done this a long time ago? Then the answer is yes. Now, if I'm Dak, I say, well, let me see what Trevor Lawrence is going to get or Justin Herbert's going to get. I would have played the long game there, but I get the feeling that Jerry is willing to move on from Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott, not necessarily CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons.
I would agree with that. I think that there's some level of frustration with the lack of playoff success that the Cowboys have had. under Dak Prescott as the quarterback. And, I don't think they will verbalize this, but I think their thought process is, hey, if he plays great again and we win a couple playoff games, if we finally get back to a conference championship game or maybe even a Super Bowl, then we'll pay him whatever we want. They have more money than any other team. They can give a $150 million signing bonus and spread out over 6 years. They're not worried about somebody outbidding them for Dak. I think that they are thinking, are we sure this is what we want to do? They're going to give him one more year. If he still can't get it done, I think they might go with someone else, Dan, for less money and say, listen, we can lose playoff games with somebody else with the roster we have.
It's weird. I know this has been brought up before. It might have been Dan Orlovsky who said this, that he doesn't know if Jerry is hell-bent on winning a Super Bowl as much as staying in the news and having a team that is constantly talked about. Well, he certainly has that. They haven't done anything in decades, but they are the most talked about football team, the most popular football team. He's still making a lot of money. And I mean, I have a hard time believing an owner like Jerry and his ego wouldn't want to win another Super Bowl. But, I mean, he is making a lot of money without winning anything, which is pretty amazing.
The thought has occurred to me, Dan, with every passing year, it feels like you hear almost less of a sense of urgency from Jerry Jones to get back to the Super Bowl or win it. You would think it would be the opposite. He's in his 80s now. You would think that it would be a higher priority, but it's almost like, and again, he would never say this, it's almost like they look at who's making the most money as being who's really winning. I'm sure they want to win, and they were disappointed by the Packers game and all that. But after all these years, Dan, where they've been in the mix, but they haven't been able to get over the hump, and a lot of those years, credit to him, he's tried to bring in Roy Williams, or he's tried to bring in one more guy to get them over the hump. It's almost like he's resigned himself to the fact that if you don't have Brady or Mahomes, you're probably not getting over the hump anyway. So let's make as much money as we possibly can by staying competitive and staying in the news.
And I brought this up to the Danettes that I could see at least 6 teams interested in Dak Prescott. Let's say after this year has another good year, maybe MVP candidate again. Seattle would be interested. Raiders would be interested. Titans would be interested. Who else did we come up with? Other teams that would be interested. Marvin,
New York Giants.
Giants, yes, Giants would be unbelievable. Because
I think is really interesting about that, Dan. I was talking with somebody about this the other day. They were asking. I think I was out on the radio out in the Bay Area, and they were asking me about Purdy. And what I think is really interesting when you think of Tua's contract situation, and a year from now Purdy's contract situation. We all agree that they're good players and that they're very valuable to the teams that they're currently on. But I really wonder what those guys would get on the open market.
I agree with you. I agree. I brought it up about Tua yesterday. He is more valuable. The value is to the Dolphins and vice versa, not on the open market, because I don't know if there's going to be anybody standing in line going, you know what? We want to pay Tua $60 million.
Right, because think about that. I think the perception around the league is that he's a very good timing and rhythm passer, and that Mike McDaniel is excellent. And in that offense, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, he's flourishing. But you combine the fact that he's not a second reaction player and that he might not do as well in a different system with the injury history. This is why that deal with the Dolphins hasn't gotten done yet. It's because Tua wants whatever he wants, $55 million a year, whatever, plus. And the Dolphins are sitting there thinking, Tua, we really like you. We're just not sure anybody else would give that to you. Like who are we bidding against? Are we bidding against ourselves right now?
True. I agree. That's where, and I know agents want to get the most, but we've talked about, like what Baker Mayfield did was really smart. Let me find that middle ground and Mitch Trubisky, if he had done that, he probably would have stayed in Pittsburgh. If he found that's a sweet spot for both of us instead of me wanting more than I really need. And I think does Brock Purdy fall into that same category of, like, even now, do you say, hey, you know what, let's start talking about an extension, and this is sort of the area where we want to be? Or does he go, hey, screw Mr. Irrelevant, I'm going to Super Bowls. I want to be paid commensurate to that.
Well, so the thing that Purdy has in his favor is that there are so many teams now running some variation of the Shanahan offense. We know about all the head coaches, but even like Zach Robinson is the OC in Atlanta, right? So there's enough teams running that offense that they could look at Purdy, I think, and say, well, in our offense, it's the same thing or similar. He could operate at a really high level. But that's another one where the 49ers are going to have to really think about this. I know they value him. He's a really good player. They want to keep him. But, he's not Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not a guy whose talent transcends the scheme. He's a guy that performs very well within that scheme.
We're talking to Ross Tucker of Westwood One, CBS Sports, College Football, and NFL, Ross Tucker Football Podcast. What is John Harbaugh talking about with his praise of Lamar Jackson, who once again, every single training camp gets sick? Like, he's absent again. Every year he's been sick in training camp. Whatever is happening, I don't know. It just seems odd. But then he came out with so much praise for Lamar Jackson, and it made it seem like everybody is hating on Lamar Jackson. All we're asking is, if you win an MVP, how about you flirt with a Super Bowl?
I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. I will say, off the top of my head, I can remember very few quarterbacks that missed practice or game time with stomach issues. And it's been Lamar like 3 times. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what he's eating, or I don't know if look, nowadays, what do they have? All those different illnesses that they now have names of for people with their stomach, Crohn's or celiac. And maybe he has something like that. I don't know. I would just say it is unusual, how often it seems like this happens to him. And I'm not overly concerned about missing a couple practices, but the guy's missed parts of games before. I mean, we all seen the video where he's, going to the bathroom in Cincinnati or wherever that was. I think John Harbaugh is just trying to defend his guy. And I don't know what you say about somebody getting sick, but I do think
it's not even that, though, Ross. It's about your playoff record. He's not good in the playoffs. They had a home game against Kansas City last year. In the playoffs, you're the MVP. You win those games. That's not we're not going out of our way to criticize him, but I don't know if he feels that way, but John Harbaugh, I think, was trying to get out in front of this and say, hey, he's going to be, the vision is he'll be the greatest quarterback to ever play.
Yeah, that's a little bit much for me. If we go back to that game, I think we all agree that Todd Monken, the OC for the Ravens, abandoned the run way too early. We have no idea why he did that, why he didn't continue to run the ball. But those are the games, Dan, that everybody's watching. And you can't watch that game and not think Mahomes is just better. I mean, Lamar made some special plays, but Mahomes seemingly, I know he doesn't, but he seemingly makes every clutch play, every third down, every fourth down, Mahomes makes the play. Meanwhile, Lamar Jackson, they're in the game and he's throwing the ball in the end zone into triple coverage. The way I know he was MVP, Dan. The games in January and February, that's the only games people remember now. Nobody remembers anything from last regular season. They remember those playoff games. They remember what Mahomes and Kelsey did, and they remember what Lamar did. And right or wrong, that's what we're it's the last thing we saw.
Always great to talk to you. We're just getting started. Last weekend without football. It starts. It's on. Get ready.
It is on, man. 6 days from now, there will be NFL players in uniform on a field. I can't wait.
Thank you, Ross. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too, Dan. Thank you.
That's Ross Tucker, CBS Sports. Well, look at him getting a promotion.